He stood frozen in the gym, wiping spit off his cheek. But when they realized he was Chuck Norris' son, everything changed. The sky was still tinged with dawn's pale light when Jack Norris clutched his backpack straps at the front porch, stomach twisting in a knot of nerves. His father's rumble of an engine pulled into the driveway. Older model pickup, dusted with road grit from Chuck's latest trip. Jack's mom waved from the doorway, offering a tight smile of encouragement. Chuck Norris stepped out, tall and steady, arms folded as he studied his son. "Ready?" he asked, voice quiet but warm. Jack nodded, swallowing hard. Chuck gave him a quick nod, opened the passenger door, and Jack slid inside. The seatbelt clicked, and for a moment the world was just the hum of the engine and Jack's noisy heartbeat. Take a second to subscribe. It really helps. Thanks. Now back to the story. They rolled through quiet streets. Chuck glanced over, catching Jack's eye in the rearview mirror. "Remember," he said, "you earn respect by how you treat others, no matter what they say." Jack exhaled, words sinking in. At Lincoln Middle, the parking lot bristled with cars and chattering students. Chuck parked, and Jack hopped out, backpack bouncing. A cluster of kids shouted greetings to one another, faces painted with excitement or dread. Jack's stomach clenched again, memories of summer adventures colliding with the unknown of new lockers, new faces. Chuck walked him to the entrance. "I'll be back at 5, he said. He bent down, ruffling Jack's hair, a small, grounding gesture. "Stand tall. You got this." Jack squared his shoulders and slipped into the lobby, walls plastered with club flyers and upcoming carnival posters. A gust of cool air from the hallways carried echoes of locker doors slamming and sneakers squeaking. His heart pounded, but he drew strength from his father's words. In homeroom, Mrs. Reynolds greeted him with a warm smile. Jack found an empty desk near the window, back to the wall, scanning the room as he settled in. Classmates peeked over shoulders, sizing him up, whispering under breath. Jack tucked a loose strand of hair behind his ear and took a steadying breath. The bell rang, a clear chime that startled him. Mrs. Reynolds flipped through attendance. "Welcome, everyone," she said, voice bright. Jack's world narrowed to this moment. First day, first impression. He squared his gaze forward, determined not to let fear define him. The new school year had begun, and Jack Norris meant to meet it head-on. Jack pushed open the classroom door and paused in the threshold, inhaling the sharp scent of chalk dust and new textbooks. Desks arranged in neat rows stretched before him. Each he felt eyes on him as Mrs. Reynolds moved down the row, hearing names and hobbies, a mix of video games, soccer, and piano. Jack's stomach fluttered when she reached him. He cleared his throat. "I'm Jack Norris. I enjoy martial arts." A few polite nods followed. Before she could move on, a voice cut through the murmur. Bryce, seated 2 desks ahead, slouched in his chair with an arm draped over the backrest. His tone was casual, but his words carried a taunt. "Martial arts, huh? You planning to roundhouse kick someone who annoys you?" Laughter rippled through his small group of friends. Jack's cheeks warmed. He met Bryce's smirk with calm brown eyes. "Just defending myself, if needed," he said evenly. The class quieted, curious to see what would happen. Bryce leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "So, you think you're some kind of action hero's kid?" he challenged, voice dripping with mock admiration. "Where's your stunt double?" A couple of kids snickered, shuffling in their seats. Others watched, intrigued. Jack's jaw set. He took a steady breath, remembering his father's words about respect. "No stunt doubles," he replied, voice firm. "But I don't kick people for fun." He met Bryce's gaze directly. Bryce's grin widened. "Too bad," he said, standing up, an intentional display of dominance. He loomed over Jack's desk, arms crossed. "Maybe you need a taste of the real world before you start playing hero." A hush fell. Mrs. Reynolds cleared her throat, and Bryce turned his eyes toward her, narrowing his expression. "Nothing, Mrs. Reynolds," he lied smoothly. She nodded and moved on to the next student, leaving Jack and Bryce alone in the silent tension. Jack shifted in his seat, the wood creaking beneath him. He noticed Bryce's friends exchange cautious glances. Bryce let a moment stretch, then sat back down, chest puffed out as if he'd won. Jack exhaled slowly, heart still racing. As the lesson resumed, Jack opened his notebook but kept stealing glances at Bryce, aware that a challenge had been issued, and that how he responded would set the tone for everything to come. The classroom felt smaller, charged with the unspoken dare. Show me who you really are. Occupied by a student bent over their morning work or whispering quietly in clusters. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating floating dust motes and the pale green walls dotted with motivational posters. He slipped in quietly, backpack sliding down his shoulder as he scanned for an empty seat. Near the front, two girls passed notes and giggled. Farther back, a boy tapped his pencil impatiently on the desktop. Mrs. Reynolds stood at the chalkboard, chalk in hand, finishing a welcome message in looping cursive. Every pair of eyes flicked toward him for a heartbeat. Jack met their gaze, offering a small, polite nod before moving down the aisle. The whispers started low. A name here, a question there. But he held his head high, pretending the room was bigger than it felt. A girl in the second row scooted over so he could slide into the desk beside her. He dropped his bag at his feet and settled in, adjusting the chair before turning to face forward. His palms pressed flat against the wood, steadying himself as Mrs. Reynolds turned around. Her smile was genuine. "Good morning, Jack. Welcome to homeroom." He returned it, voice steady. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds." She gestured toward an empty desk at the front. "Feel free to choose any seat that's open. I'll let you settle in." Jack's eyes flicked to the front row. Two empty spots, but he remained where he was, closer to the middle, comforted by the steady thrum of classmates around him. As he arranged his notebooks, a boy too rose back, nudged his friend. "That's Jack Norris, right?" The friend shrugged, whispered back, and both turned to watch Jack with curious eyes. Mrs. Reynolds cleared her throat. "Let's begin with introductions. Tell us your name and one thing you enjoy." The chatter softened as attention turned to her. Jack exhaled quietly, then leaned forward when his turn came, ready to stake his place. The room hummed with anticipation. A new student, a new chapter, and the promise of more challenges to come. The cafeteria buzzed with clattering trays and hum of conversation as Jack maneuvered through the lunch line, tray in hand. He spotted an empty table near the windows, just enough space for one. He settled onto the metal bench, eyes scanning the room. The chatter felt louder here, punctuated by laughter and the occasional clang of a dropped fork. Jack unwrapped his sandwich, heart still pounding from Bryce's challenge earlier. Across the room, he caught Bryce's eye. Bryce lounged at his usual table with his crew, leaning back on the top of the bench, arms splayed like a king on his throne. Their table sat strategically in the center, where all eyes could naturally drift. Bryce's smirk was in place, sharp and taunting. Jack took a bite, feigning calm, but each chew echoed in his ears. He realized the lunchroom had its own hierarchy: the popular kids, the athletes, the loners, and the ones caught in between. He was newly minted in that last category. A friend from homeroom, Elena, slid onto the bench across from him, tray balanced with practiced ease. "You okay?" she whispered, nodding toward Bryce. Jack managed a small smile. "I'll live." Elena nodded and offered him an extra carton of milk. He accepted gratefully, sipping slowly. Across the room, Bryce's friend nudged him, and Bryce stood, swaggering toward Jack's table. Jack's breath caught. He set down his sandwich, hands flat on the tray. Bryce stopped just short of Jack's table, leaning in close enough that Jack could smell the faint scent of Jim's socks and cologne. "Eating alone?" Bryce drawled. The lunchroom chatter dimmed as some tables turned to watch. Jack met Bryce's gaze, posture straight. "I like the view." His voice was calm. A ripple of quiet laughter passed through Bryce's group. Bryce pressed a shoulder against the table edge, blocking Jack's path. "You think you're tough, Norris?" he challenged, tone low. Jack swallowed, but held firm. "Better than thinking spitting's funny." The remark referred to Bryce's earlier stunt in gym class. Bryce's jaw tightened. He glared for a heartbeat, then straightened with a grunt. "Watch your mouth," he muttered and sauntered back to his table. Elena exhaled, shaking her head. Jack picked up his sandwich, the cafeteria noise rising again. He knew this lunchroom would be a battleground, and he just claimed his ground. The whistle blew, signaling the start of dodgeball. Jack felt his muscles tense as he squared off against his classmates, eyes focused on the red rubber sphere. Coach Spencer paced the sideline, clipboard in hand, shouting reminders about footwork and form. Jack launched a throw at Bryce, who dodged with a laugh. As Bryce pivoted to retaliate, Jack ducked under a high lob. The ball whipped back toward the coach as Bryce's friend deflected it carelessly. The sphere struck Coach Spencer's clipboard, rattling papers and sending a spray of his water bottle across the court. "Watch it," Coach barked, stepping forward. He spat reflexively, an unfortunate mix of anger and surprise, and it flew straight toward Jack. Time slowed as Jack felt a wet sting on his cheek. His eyes widened in shock as droplets splattered against his skin, mixing with the gym's harsh fluorescent glare. A hush fell over the students. Bryce froze mid-lunge, his grin vanishing. The ball fell forgotten to the polished wood floor. Coach Spencer's face paled, horror replacing his earlier fury. "Oh my God," he muttered, stepping back. Jack wiped his cheek with the sleeve of his shirt, crestfallen and humiliated. Heat rushed to his ears as classmates whispered, some recoiling, others staring wide-eyed. A few students covered their mouths, uncertain whether to laugh or gasp. Coach Spencer hurried forward, hands raised in apology. "Jack, son of O, I'm so sorry. That was unintentional. Are you okay?" His voice shook, guilt etched in every line of his weathered face. Jack blinked, vision swimming with the sting of saliva and embarrassment. He nodded briefly, voice caught his throat. I'm fine," he managed, though his words felt hollow. Coach Spencer swiped at his mouth with a towel, mortified. "Everyone, clear the court," he commanded softly. The students scrambled away, creating a wide circle around Jack. Bryce hesitated, then slipped away, face conflicted. Jack stood alone under the bright gym lights, cheeks burning and heart pounding. Coach Spencer approached again, voice low. Let me get you cleaned up." He offered Jack his towel and a slow, genuine apology. Jack pressed his lips together, glancing at the towel, then back at the coach. In that moment, the spit was more than an accident. It was the spark that would ignite a storm of consequences, changing Jack's school year forever. The gym stayed silent long after Coach Spencer retreated to fetch a basin of water and fresh towels. Jack pressed the damp cloth against his cheek, the cool fabric a small comfort against the burn of humiliation. Around him, students drifted away, their whispered conjectures tumbling like unseen pebbles in his mind. In the bleachers, Mrs. Reynolds clutched her lesson plans, pale and wide-eyed. She descended the steps and approached Jack with worry in her stride. "Are you all right, Jack?" she asked quietly. He managed a nod, though every thump of his racing heart felt like an announcement of his shame. Down at the scorer's table, Bryce's friends exchanged glances. One of them leaned over, whispering something that made another laugh, low, mean laughter that made Jack flinch. His gaze flicked to Bryce's empty spot, the bully having slunk away earlier. The absence felt heavier than his presence ever had. The sound system crackled as the PA buzzed back to life, but no announcements came. The gym's echo swallowed the void, turning every drip of the fountain and scrape of sneakers into a reminder of what had happened. Even the walls seemed to lean closer, as if eager to witness Jack's next move. A trio of classmates, students he'd barely spoken to before, stepped forward. One offered him a hand. "That was messed up," she said, voice low but sincere. He forced a small smile of thanks. Their solidarity felt like a lifeline in the swirling storm. Coach Spencer returned, carrying a basin of water and fresh towels. His shoulders were slumped, guilt etched in the set of his jaw. He knelt beside Jack. "I can't apologize enough," he said, voice thick. "I reacted poorly. It won't happen again." Jack pressed the towel to his face, blinking back the sting in his eyes. He looked up at the coach, searching for sincerity. "Thank you," he whispered. "Just save the apologies." As Coach Spencer helped him to his feet, the gym lights seemed to soften. The drip of the water basin and the coach's careful steps punctuated the hush. Outside, The late afternoon sun slanted through the high windows, casting long shadows on the polished floor, silent witnesses to the shockwaves that would ripple through this school for days to come. Jack found refuge in the cavernous silence of the locker room, its rows of steel doors humming with residual echoes of the gym's chaos. He leaned against the cool metal of his assigned locker, shoulders slumped and breath shallow. A stream of water dripped rhythmically in the corner, marking times he tried to steady the tumult in his chest. He peeled off his jersey, pressing the towel to his cheek one last time before dropping on the bench. Every clang of a locker opening or closing sounded too loud, too sharp. Jack closed his eyes, recalling the sting of saliva and the burning flush of humiliation. He pressed his forehead against the locker door, grounding himself against its cold, steady surface. A furtive knock at the entrance made him tense. The door creaked open, and Emma from homeroom slipped inside, her bag slung over her shoulder. She carried 2 bottles of water and a small granola bar. "Hey," she said softly, closing the door behind her. "Coach sent me, said you might need this." She handed him the water and bar without waiting for thanks. Jack managed to nod. He took a sip, the cool liquid soothing more than he'd expected. Emma perched on the bench beside him. "Don't let him get to you," she said, voice low. "It was an accident, but everyone saw it. They're talking." Her eyes flicked toward the locker doors as if expecting eavesdroppers. He swallowed, chewing the granola bar slowly. He paused, searching for words. "I wanted to fit in, not stand out." His gaze dropped to his hands, now trembling less. Emma's expression softened. "You're not alone." She reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "People respect you more now for taking it." Jack exhaled, letting the tension seep out with the air. The locker room's artificial lights hummed quietly overhead, and for the first time since gym class, he felt the storm inside him begin to clear. Emma stood, giving him a small, supportive smile. "I've got your back, okay?" He nodded again, feeling a flicker of gratitude. As she left, the locker room felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary, a place to collect himself before facing the world outside again. Jack closed his locker, squared his shoulders, and stepped toward the exit. The afternoon sun heated the hallway beyond, promising a new chapter in his fight to belong. Jack slid onto the bleachers outside the locker room, backpack beside him, sunlight warming the metal beneath his fingers. His phone buzzed, a simple home icon lighting up the screen. He tapped it, scrolling through contacts to Dad. For a moment, he hesitated, thumb hovering over the call button. Then he pressed it. The line rang twice. Then his father's familiar, calm voice came through. "Jack, everything okay, buddy?" Jack swallowed, the knot in his chest tightening. "Hey, Dad." His voice wavered more than he wanted. "Coach Spencer." He paused, wrestling for composure. "He spat on me." There was a gentle quiet on the other end. "Spit." Chuck's tone was steady concern. "You're sure?" Jack nodded, though his dad couldn't see it. "He got hit with the ball, got mad, and it hit me." His cheeks burned at the memory. I retreated to the locker room. "You did the right thing," Chuck said quietly. "Are you hurt?" "A little," Jack admitted. "A few kids saw. Some said it was an accident." He glanced at the open hallway, empty except for distant footfalls. "Accidents happen," Chuck replied. "But humiliation, that's another matter." He sighed, warm authority in his words. "Listen to me. You stood your ground today. I'm proud of you." Heat welled in Jack's chest. "Thanks, Dad." He exhaled. "I just didn't know what to do." "You did," Chuck said firmly. "You took care of yourself, found a safe space, and reached out. That's strength, not weakness." He paused. "I'll be there tomorrow to talk to the school. Would that help?" Jack considered it. The idea of his father at school head turned both reassuring and embarrassing. "Yeah," he said finally. "Yeah, that'd help." "Good," Chuck replied. "Get home safe. I'll see you in the morning, and we'll handle this together." Jack smiled, feeling lighter. "Okay, Dad. Love you." "Love you more," Chuck answered. The line clicked as they hung up. Jack folded his phone shut and stared at the empty field bathed in late afternoon light. He felt steadier now, grounded by his father's calm words and the knowledge he wasn't facing this alone. Miles above the clouds, Chuck Norris stared out the window seat of his flight, arms crossed over his chest. Below, the patchwork of fields and highways slid past, a silent promise of the distant airport waiting his arrival. He thought of Jack's voice, unsteady but honest, and felt a familiar stir, a father's resolve sharpening into purpose. He replayed every detail Jack had shared, the errant spit, the shock in his son's cheeks, the whispers and stares. It wasn't just about coaching or discipline. It was about protecting his child's dignity. Chuck leaned back and closed his eyes, summoning the calm focus that had guided him through countless fights and challenges. In his mind, he outlined his plan. First, meet with Principal Harris, demand accountability. Next, ensure Coach Spencer understood the gravity of his actions and made a proper apology. Then, address the broader school culture. Bullying disguised as humor would not stand under his watch. The attendant's soft footsteps nudged him back to the present. Chuck offered a nod when offered water, then set the cup down with deliberate care. He'd spent decades teaching discipline and respect. Now he would wed that lesson to action. Touching down, the plane's wheels met the runway with a muted thud. Chuck exhaled, a quiet release of anticipation. He gathered his bag from the overhead bin, posture unwavering, then made his way down the aisle. Passengers recognized him, offering nods of respect or wide-eyed stares, but he focused solely on the task ahead. At the terminal, he strode past ticket counters and baggage claim, every step purposeful. His phone buzzed with a message from Jack's mom. He's okay. Thank you. He tapped back a quick acknowledgement. A private vow. I've got this. Outside, the airport lot glowed under streetlights. Chuck's truck waited, engine idling. He climbed in, started the ignition, and pulled onto the road leading back to Lincoln Middle. Night air filled the cab, crisp and charged. He glanced at his reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes steady, jaw set. Tomorrow, he would stand in that school hallway and remind everyone what it meant to treat a child with respect. Chuck Norris didn't back down from injustice, especially when it threatened his family's honor. And Jack would never face it alone. The next morning, Mrs. Norris sat stiffly in Principal Harris's modest office, hands clasped in her lap. Sunlight filtered through blinds, casting striped shadows across her face. Across from her, Principal Harris unfolded a letter on his desk, Jack's note recounting the incident. His brow furrowed with concern. "Thank you for coming in," he began, voice measured. "I've reviewed Jack's account and spoke with Coach Spencer. He deeply regrets what happened." Mrs. Norris nodded curtly, her posture composed but unyielding. Principal Harris leaned forward. "We take such matters very seriously. I want to ensure Jack feels safe and respected here." He paused, choosing his words. "Coach Spencer will apologize publicly, and we'll arrange a restorative session with Jack, private, at his convenience." Mrs. Norris exhaled slowly, relief flickering. "That's a start," she said. "But humiliation has a longer shadow than an apology. I want to see a clear plan to prevent this in the future. Training for staff on professional conduct and student dignity." Principal Harris nodded. "Agreed. We'll implement a mandatory workshop next week for all faculty on appropriate boundaries and communication. Additionally, we'll establish a reporting protocol so students can raise concerns without fear." Behind her, the office door opened briefly as Vice Principal Reed dropped off a printed agenda for staff development, bullet points on communication standards and conflict resolution. He offered a respectful nod, then slipped away. Mrs. Norris glanced at the agenda. "I'd like to review it before it goes out," she said softly. "I know Jack's not the only one who's suffered in silence." Principal Harris tapped the document. "Of course. I appreciate your input." He leaned back, hands steepled. "Is there anything else you need?" Mrs. Norris considered. "I'd like Jack to have a point person, a counselor or mentor he can go to if he feels uneasy. Someone separate from his teachers and coaches." Principal Harris agreed immediately. "We'll assign Ms. Alvarez as his liaison. She's trained in student advocacy." Mrs. Norris nodded, tension easing. "Thank you, Mr. Harris." I want Jack to learn from this, not be defined by it. He offered her a small, genuine smile. That's our goal as well. She stood, and he rose with her. I trust we'll follow through, she said firmly. I will be checking in. Principal Harris extended his hand, which she shook. As she left the office, she felt the weight of her son's dignity restored, one meeting at a time. Bryce stared out his bedroom window at the late afternoon sky, arms folded, wrestling with a tangle of guilt and defensiveness. His small trophy shelf, lined with ribbons and plaques, felt heavy with expectations. His parents had always pushed him to be the best, to win at any cost. At dinner, his father praised his latest soccer game, eyes bright until Bryce's mother glanced at the growing bruise on his elbow. "What happened there?" she asked gently. Bryce shrugged, forcing a grin. "Just a practice collision." He knew she suspected otherwise, but said nothing more, the unspoken pressure to appear unbeatable keeping her quiet. Later, Bryce sank onto his beanbag chair and scrolled through social media. Clips from yesterday's gym class had gone viral among students. Coach Spencer's spit, Jack's stunned face, Bryce's silent retreat. Comments ranged from mockery, "Spit happens," to sympathy for Jack, praising his poise. Bryce's chest tightened. He hadn't meant to start a scene. He'd only been following his teacher's lead, playing along to fit in. He pulled up photos of Jack from the school website. Neat hair, polite smile, the son of Chuck Norris, no less. Bryce stared at Jack's confident posture and felt a twist of envy. Jack had something Bryce craved: respect. Everyone seemed to treat him differently, half in awe, half whispering tales of action hero lineage. Bryce's own achievements felt small by comparison. A message popped up from one of his soccer friends. "Dude, you're trending. People think you egged coach on." He deleted the notification, heart pounding. No one knew the full story. He hadn't meant to humiliate Jack, but once the spit flew, he'd frozen, afraid to intervene. He tossed his phone aside, tension coiling in his chest. He rose and paced to the mirror, examining his reflection. The startling thing wasn't his smirk. It was the uncertainty in his eyes. Was he really this person who followed cruelty? His mother's gentle voice drifted from downstairs. Bryce took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, he would face Jack, apologize if possible. He owed it to himself to make things right, to break the cycle of fear and expectation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Bryce realized the real challenge wasn't on the dodgeball court or in the lunchroom. It was inside him. The school parking lot buzzed with morning activity as yellow buses rolled in and families waved goodbye. Chuck Norris's black pickup eased into a spot near the front, drawing curious glances from students unloading backpacks. He stepped out, tall and composed, adjusting his leather jacket against the crisp breeze. He walked toward the entrance beneath the towering facade of Lincoln Middle, hands casually tucked in his pockets. A cluster of students paused, whispering and pointing. Chuck's presence, unmistakable even without cameras, sent a ripple through the crowd. He offered a polite nod to a teacher unlocking a side door, who nearly dropped her keys in surprise. Inside the foyer, the hum of chatter and locker slams felt different, quieter, anticipatory. Chuck tucked his phone into his pocket and made his way down the main hallway, each step measured. He passed bulletin boards cluttered with art projects and club announcements, his gaze sweeping for signs of Jack. A group of students near the trophy case recognized him and fell silent, exchanging wide-eyed looks. One dared to whisper, "That's Chuck Norris." The others nodded, eyes glued to his steady stride. Chuck turned a corner and spotted Principal Harris standing by his office door, clipboard in hand, shoulders squared in expectation. The principal's expression flickered from surprise to guarded respect. Chuck nodded, offering a brief smile. "Morning, Principal Harris." "Good morning, Mr. Norris," Harris replied, voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Thank you for coming." Chuck inclined his head. "I'm here for Jack," he said quietly. Students nearby paused at lockers, jaws dropping. Chuck's calm authority under the fluorescent lights sent a clear message. This was a man on a mission. Principal Harris led the way into his office, closing the door against the corridor's chatter. Chuck's footsteps stopped just inside. He turned, gaze direct. The office felt suddenly smaller, charged with expectation. Outside, students whispered and phones discreetly lifted, capturing every moment. In that brief journey from parking lot to principal's office, Chuck Norris had shifted the school's atmosphere. The day's challenges lay ahead, but Lincoln Middle would know, from this moment on, that Jack Norris would have his father's unwavering support. Chuck stepped into Principal Harris's office, the door clicking shut behind him. The soft glow from a desk lamp cast long shadows across the room's muted green walls, lined with framed diplomas and school photos. Principal Harris rose from behind his desk, folding his hands. "Mr. Norris," Harris began, voice measured. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Chuck's gaze settled on Harris, calm but unyielding. "I'm here because my son was disrespected. Coach Spencer spat on him yesterday." Harris's shoulders stilled. "I understand. I've spoken with Coach, and he's expressed deep remorse." He paused, searching Chuck's face. "I'd like to apologize on the school's behalf." Chuck folded his arms. "Apologies are words," he said evenly. "My son needs assurance this won't happen again." His tone carried the weight of protective resolve. Principal Harris nodded, leaning forward. "Of course. We're implementing mandatory staff training on professional conduct. Coach Spencer will offer a public apology in assembly, and I'll oversee Jack's support, counseling, and mentorship." Chuck's eyes narrowed slightly. "What about accountability? What are the consequences for the coach's actions?" Harris swallowed. "He'll receive a formal reprimand, 2-week suspension from coaching duties, and he must attend conflict resolution workshops." Chuck considered this. He paced once, then faced Harris. "I want Coach Spencer to apologize to Jack personally, in private first, then publicly. I want Jack's counselor present during the private apology." Harris nodded, scribbling notes. "It will be arranged." Chuck's gaze softened as he thought of his son's confidence. "And I want a statement sent to parents, so they understand the seriousness of this." A flicker of tension passed across Harris's face, but he agreed. "Communications will go out today." Chuck exhaled, meeting Harris's eyes. "Thank you. I expect you to follow through." Harris rose, extending his hand. "You have my word." Chuck shook it, the grip firm but not hostile. As Chuck turned to leave, Harris paused. "Mr. Norris, if there's anything else you need, just respect," Chuck replied over his shoulder, voice quiet but clear. He opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving a silent promise hanging in the air. At Lincoln Middle, no one would disrespect his son again. The buzz in the teacher's lounge was electric by mid-morning. Whispers followed Chuck Norris's departure from Principal Harris's office like a current through water. Some teachers exchanged furtive glances, admiration edged with apprehension, while Coach Spencer sat at a corner table, head bowed over a lukewarm coffee. Outside the lounge window, students hurried to classes, oblivious to the storm brewing within. Mrs. Reynolds approached Coach Spencer, voice low but firm. "Are you all right?" she asked, concern softening her tone. He looked up, guilt and embarrassment warring in his eyes. I'll manage," he muttered, stirring sugar into his coffee. Across the room, Vice Principal Reed stood with a cluster of staff, clipboard in hand. He cleared his throat. "We need to ensure no one feels unsafe here," he began, glancing at Coach Spencer. Some nodded, but a few lips twitched in skepticism. The undercurrent of tension was palpable. Just then, Bryce swaggered in with his friends, their laughter cutting through the hush. They flopped into chairs at a nearby table, scanning the room until their eyes locked on Coach Spencer. Bryce's face hardened, guilt twisting into defiance. He leaned toward his friends. "He's the one who spat, right? Can't believe they actually suspended him." At Bryce's words, Coach Spencer's coffee trembled in his hand. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the linoleum. "That's enough," he said, voice louder than intended. The room froze. Teachers and staff turned, startled by his sudden outburst. Bryce stiffened. "You better get over yourself, Coach," he shot back, tone sharp. Bryce's friends braced for a confrontation. Mrs. Reynolds stepped between them. "Not here," she said quietly, placing a hand on Bryce's arm. Bryce shrugged her off, eyes blazing. He disrespected Jack Norris. That's worse than a shrug. He looked around, convinced others agreed, but found uncertain faces instead. Coach Spencer ran a hand through his hair, exhaling harshly. I made a mistake, he admitted, voice raw. I'm trying to fix it. He locked eyes with Bryce. I owe Jack an apology. Bryce's defiance wavered. The tension rippled through the room. Teachers uncomfortable, students overhearing, Coach Spencer vulnerable. No one knew what would break the stalemate. Blame, fear, or an act of genuine reconciliation. For this moment, Lincoln Middle held its breath. Jack stood at his locker, heart hammering as the hallway bustled with students changing classes. His fingers trembled around the combination dial, but he forced himself to focus, recalling his father's words, "Stand tall, even when it hurts." He spun the dial, the locker clicked open, and he slid his books inside. A soft murmur drifted through the corridor. Coach Spencer's apology in assembly would come later today, and word was spreading. Jack drew a deep breath, steeling himself for the moment ahead. He turned toward the gym entrance and began walking, each footstep echoing in his mind. At the gym doors, he paused. Through the narrow windows, he saw Coach Spencer standing at the front, clipboard gone, posture stiff but resolute. A line of students waited, some curious, some supportive, others hesitant. Jack swallowed, then stepped forward, head high. When his name was called, Jack stepped onto the gym floor under the glare of fluorescent lights. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. His chest tightened, but he didn't flinch. He walked to Coach Spencer, stopping a few feet away. Coach Spencer inhaled, raising a hand. "Jack," he began, voice steady but soft. He met Jack's gaze directly. "I owe you a personal apology for my behavior. I lost my temper, and I'm truly sorry." His words hung in the air. Jack felt a surge of nerves, but spoke clearly. "Thank you for apologizing, Coach. I accept it." His voice echoed in the quiet gym. A murmur of approval rippled through the students. Coach Spencer nodded, relief and respect mingling on his face. He extended his hand, an invitation. Jack hesitated for a heartbeat, then reached out and shook it firmly. The handshake drew a wave of applause, breaking the tension. As Jack stepped back to rejoin his classmates, he felt a new strength coursing through him. He had faced the moment head-on, demanded respect with grace, and reclaimed his dignity. The gym lights seemed brighter now, and the path ahead less daunting. Exiting the gym, Jack spotted Bryce lingering by the doors. Bryce's gaze met his, uncertain and contrite. Jack nodded a small greeting before walking on, head held high, proof that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Coach Spencer sat alone in the empty gym after everyone left, the echo of footsteps long gone. He stared at the polished floor, remembering the moment he'd spat and the pain it caused Jack. Guilt weighed heavily on his shoulders. He rose and gathered the scattered dodgeballs into a cart, each thud against the mesh stinging like the day's events. He walked to the locker room doorway, pausing as the doorframe cast his reflection on the glass. The man staring back looked older, doubt and regret etched on his face. He collected his coach's clipboard from the bench and thumbed through the pages, none of which mattered anymore. Discipline and drills felt hollow after the incident. Coach Spencer sighed, then reached into his bag and pulled out a clean towel and bottle of antiseptic wipes, items he'd used to help Jack, but never directly to soothe his own conscience. He unfolded the towel and pressed it against his own cheek, as if to feel some fading of shame. He remembered Jack's calm acceptance during the public apology, how graciously the boy had responded. That image stayed with him. He knew teaching wasn't just about physical training, it was about character. In that moment, he resolved to become the kind of mentor Jack deserved. The next morning, Coach Spencer stood at the teacher's entrance, waiting for Jack. As the student approached, the coach stepped forward, towel and wipes in hand. "Jack," he began, voice gentle, "I wanted to follow up on my apology." Jack paused, eyes wary but open. He held out the items. "These are for you," he said, "just in case. And thank you for showing me dignity in return." Jack nodded, voice small. Thanks, coach. The coach smiled softly. I'll be better, more mindful of my actions. He dropped his gaze, then looked up with quiet determination. I want to earn your trust back. Jack offered a small, genuine smile. I appreciate that. Coach Spencer watched Jack walk away, feeling a cautious optimism. He tucked the clipboard under his arm and walked to the equipment room, ready to prepare lessons not only on sport, but on respect and humanity. The gym buzzed with quiet chatter as students filled the bleachers for the midday assembly. Principal Harris stepped to the microphone at center court, clearing his throat. Thank you all for gathering here, he began, voice firm. Today we address an incident that has affected our school community. He glanced toward Coach Spencer, who stood beside him, shoulders squared. Principal Harris continued. Yesterday, Coach Spencer behaved in a way unbecoming of our educators. In the heat of the moment, he disrespected one of our students, Jack Norris, and we deeply regret that. He nodded to Coach Spencer. Coach Spencer stepped forward, voice steady though his eyes betrayed remorse. Students, faculty, and especially you, Jack, I am truly sorry for my actions. I allowed frustration to override my judgment, and I understand the hurt I caused. He paused, scanning the crowd until his gaze met Jack's. Jack, you showed grace and courage by coming forward. I admire your strength. A hush fell over the gym. Coach Spencer cleared his throat. I promise to learn from this mistake and to treat every student with the respect they deserve. He folded his hands in front of him. I ask for your forgiveness and pledge to be the mentor you need. Soft applause rippled through the bleachers, first tentative, then growing into genuine support. Students nudged one another, whispers praising Jack's poise and Coach Spencer's sincerity. Even Bryce, seated near the front, looked on with a thoughtful expression. Principal Harris returned to the microphone. We will follow this apology with meaningful action. Staff training on respectful communication, a student advisory council to voice concerns, and a commitment to fostering a safe environment for all. He raised his hand. Let's show Coach Spencer that we accept his apology and that we stand together as a community. The auditorium burst into a unified round of applause. Jack exhaled, relief and pride mingling in his chest. Coach Spencer nodded gratefully, the weight of guilt lifting. In that shared moment, the school transformed. Accountability met with forgiveness, and respect reaffirmed as the cornerstone of their community. Bryce lingered in the back of the gym as the applause faded, guilt and admiration warring in his chest. He'd watched Jack stand tall, accept the apology, and reclaim his dignity. Now, it was Bryce's turn to confront his own actions. He slipped from the bleachers and made his way toward Jack, heart pounding with every step. Students parted, offering curious glances. At Jack's locker later, Bryce cleared his throat. Jack looked up, eyes wary but open. Jack, can I talk to you? Bryce's voice was quieter than usual, tinged with hesitation. Jack nodded, closing his locker. Bryce swallowed hard before continuing. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I shouldn't have laughed or followed along. I was wrong. He paused, fumbling with the edge of his shirt. I was scared to stand up, and I picked the easy way, going with the crowd. That's on me. Jack studied him, expression thoughtful. The hallway felt still, the distant hum of other students dimmed. After a moment, Jack nodded. Thanks, Bryce. That means a lot. His voice was measured but genuine. Bryce exhaled, relief flooding him. Can I help somehow? With, I don't know, after-school groups or something? I want to make it right. He offered a tentative half-smile. Jack considered, then returned a small, encouraging smile. Actually, yeah, we're starting a peer mentoring group. Help newcomers feel welcome and safe. He dug out a permission slip from his locker. Here. He handed it to Bryce. We could use someone with your energy. Bryce accepted the paper like a lifeline. I'd like that, he said, voice firmer. I'll do my best. Jack nodded. I know you will. As Bryce walked away, clutching the slip, something in him shifted, pride replacing dread. He'd faced his fear and chose respect over ridicule. Across the corridor, Jack turned back to his locker, shoulders squared. Between them, a bridge was built, from bullying to allyship, from fear to understanding. In that quiet hallway exchange, Bryce found redemption not in grand gestures, but an honest apology and a willingness to change. And for the first time, he felt worthy of the respect he once sought through conflict. A week later, Mrs. Reynolds surveyed her classroom with a sense of quiet pride. Desks that once bore scrawled insults now displayed student-crafted kindness reminders, small laminated cards sharing uplifting quotes and supportive messages. The chatter before class was warm, teammates helping each other sharpen pencils, sharing notes without prompting. When the bell rang, Mrs. Reynolds began a new routine, a circle share. Students rose, forming a loose circle at the front. Each person offered one word describing how they felt that morning and one thing they appreciated about a classmate. Hands shot up. Liam praised Maya's artwork. Sophia thanked Daniel for lending her a notebook, and even Bryce said, "Thanks to Jack for helping me with math problems." Jack stood quietly, smiling as Mrs. Reynolds nodded in approval. She then invited the class to brainstorm kindness missions for the week. Small acts like holding doors, helping with lockers, or leaving anonymous notes of encouragement. Hands flew up, and a student council rep jotted ideas on the whiteboard. During group work, Bryce reached across to help a struggling student, guiding her through a challenging problem. Elsewhere, Coach Spencer popped in to demonstrate a quick stretching routine, an informal way to keep the lessons of respect alive. He winked at Jack, who gave a grateful nod. In the back, a shy newcomer named Ava found herself paired with Teresa, who gently showed her where to find supplies. No one snickered. Instead, Teresa introduced her to the circle share game. The nervous smile that had greeted Mrs. Reynolds' days earlier had transformed into genuine ease. As class ended, Mrs. Reynolds announced a new respect wall by the door, a space where students could post shout-outs for peers or teachers. Before they filed out, she reminded them, "Our strength is in how we treat each other." The students echoed the phrase in unison. When the last student left, Mrs. Reynolds lingered by the whiteboard. The handwritten commitments, empathy, collaboration, responsibility, gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Lincoln Middle's classroom culture had shifted from competition and fear to community and care, proving that respectful actions, no matter how small, could transform an entire room. The late afternoon sun slanted through the backyard dojo's paper screen windows, dust motes dancing in the golden light. Chuck Norris stood across from Jack on the smooth wooden floor, both barefoot, eyes locked in mutual focus. The tension of recent days had melted into quiet anticipation, a chance to reconnect through the discipline they both loved. Chuck bowed his head in respect. Jack returned the gesture, chest rising and falling in practiced rhythm. They began with slow, deliberate kata, precise blocks, measured stances, each movement echoing lessons of control and intent. Chuck watched Jack's form, noting the subtle confidence that had replaced his earlier hesitation. When the kata ended, Chuck stepped forward. "Show me courage," he said softly. He offered a gentle feint, Jack's cue to respond. Jack shifted instantly, parrying the light strike and countering with a straight punch that stopped inches short of Chuck's chest. Chuck smiled, nodding. "Good," he said. "Strong defense. Now, try flowing with me." They launched into sparring, movements accelerating yet never losing grace. Jack wove around Chuck's low kicks, ducking and pivoting, his strikes compact and controlled. Chuck met each with calm deflections, redirecting Jack's energy rather than meeting force with force. In one fluid exchange, Jack attempted a spinning hook kick. Chuck guided his leg with an open palm, redirecting him into a safe landing. They paused, chests heaving, sweat glinting on their brows. Chuck placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You've grown," he said, "not just in skill, but in heart." Jack nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "I learned from the best." Chuck moved back, adopting a more playful grin. "One more," he challenged, offering a light jab. Jack responded quickly, embodying discipline and respect. The final exchange ended with Chuck stepping back, arms raised in mock surrender. Jack lowered his fists, laughter mingling with relief as he realized he'd held his own. Chuck enveloped Jack in a firm embrace. Today wasn't about winning, he said, voice warm. It was about standing together, trusting yourself and me. Jack hugged back, the bond between father and son strengthened not by force, but by shared respect, understanding, and the silent promise that they would face every challenge side by side. Local news vans lined the curb outside Lincoln Middle, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like prickly ears tuning into the school's new vibe. Reporters hustled past the gates, microphones in hand, as parents and students paused on the sidewalks, eager to share their side of the story. On the front steps, Principal Harris greeted the press, flanked by Coach Spencer and Mrs. Norris. He offered a brief statement. We've taken meaningful steps to ensure respect and dignity are upheld for every student. Our community has rallied behind these changes. Cameras flashed, capturing nods from Coach Spencer, who appeared more relaxed, and Mrs. Norris, whose eyes shone with cautious optimism. Inside the school courtyard, a respect rally unfolded. Tables were set up by parent volunteers, offering water bottles, cookies, and sign-up sheets for the peer mentoring program Jack and Bryce were spearheading. Families mingled. A mother clasped her son's shoulder, praising his participation. A father high-fived Coach Spencer for leading staff training. Another parent handed Mrs. Norris a bouquet, whispering thanks for her advocacy. Students clustered around a bulletin board plastered with thank you notes, handwritten cards from peers expressing gratitude for kindness and support. Jack and Bryce stood nearby, explaining the mentoring program to curious underclassmen. Their partnership drew approving smiles and hopeful chatter about making the school a safer place for everyone. In the gym, a group of teachers and parents participated in a role-playing workshop led by an outside consultant, practicing scenarios of respectful conflict resolution. Laughter and serious discussion intertwined as participants swapped stories and strategies. Back on the steps, a local council member arrived, offering praise. Lincoln Middle is setting a standard for schools everywhere. Respect and unity like this don't happen by accident. He presented Principal Harris with a certificate of community leadership, prompting applause from everyone gathered. As the sun dipped low, Chuck Norris arrived, stepping out of his truck to a round of applause. He paused to greet families, shaking hands and offering a few words of encouragement to students. When he reached Jack's side, he ruffled his hair. Jack beamed, pride and gratitude shining on his face. In that moment, surrounded by cameras, neighbors, and the people who mattered most, Lincoln Middle's transformation was complete. A true community standing together, united by respect, support, and a shared belief that every member deserved to be seen and heard. Jack stood at the front of the library, flanked by a semicircle of 7th graders clutching clipboards and color-coded folders. The afternoon sun filtered through high windows, illuminating posters about kindness and respect that Jack had helped design. He cleared his throat, scanning eager faces. Thanks for joining Peer Connect, he began, voice calm and warm. Our goal is simple. Make everyone feel welcome and supported. He pointed to a chart behind him outlining icebreaker activities and weekly check-ins. This week, we'll focus on helping new students learn locker combinations and find their classrooms. Hands shot up. A boy named Marcus volunteered, voice steady. I'd like to show Sarah around after school. Jack nodded appreciatively, jotting it on the board. A girl offered to create welcome notes with fun facts about the school. Jack smiled at her enthusiasm. He turned to the back, where Teresa and Bryce handed out visitor badges and small welcome kits, school map, pencil, and a candy treat. Together, they demonstrated how to guide a newcomer with confidence and courtesy. Bryce, now more assured, described a friendly approach. Always introduce yourself, ask if they need to find anything, and share a lunch table spot. Jack paused, letting the group absorb the advice. Remember, he said, leadership is about listening. Ask questions, be patient, and show you care. He stepped into the circle, placing a hand on his clipboard. Any questions or ideas? A shy newcomer named Ava raised her hand. What if someone doesn't want help? Jack met her gaze. Then respect their space. Let them know you're here if they change their mind. Ava smiled, relieved. As the meeting wrapped up, Jack distributed buddy cards with each mentor's name and contact details. The group broke into pairs to practice welcoming a pretend new student, complete with awkward introductions and friendly gestures. Laughter and supportive feedback filled the room. Before dismissing everyone, Jack looked around at the motivated faces. Great work, everyone. Let's make Peer Connect a place where no one feels alone. The students filed out to their assignments, buzzing with purpose. Jack gathered the remaining materials, pride swelling as he realized how far he'd come. From a boy humiliated in gym class to a young leader inspiring his peers. In that library, Jack's leadership had taken root, promising a kinder school year ahead. The old gym echoed with the shuffle of chairs as staff gathered for Coach Spencer's workshop on empathy and professional boundaries. He stood at the front, lesson plan in hand, the same space where he'd once lost control, now repurposed for healing. Coach began by recounting his own mistake, how a moment's anger had led to a painful split between student and teacher. His voice was steady, acceptance replacing defensive-ness. I violated a fundamental trust, he admitted. Today we learn how to rebuild that trust. He guided participants through role-playing scenarios. One pair practiced responding calmly when a student challenged instructions. Another group practiced de-escalating conflict without judgment. Coach Spencer moved among them, offering gentle feedback and highlighting the power of tone and active listening. He then introduced the pause and reflect technique. Visualize a neutral space before reacting, count silently to 3, and choose a response that preserves dignity. Teachers and staff closed their eyes, picturing tense moments and practicing the pause, imagining the shift from impulsive reaction to thoughtful action. A volunteer teacher described a recent hallway confrontation. The group coached her through patience-driven responses, emphasizing I statements, I feel concerned when, instead of accusatory language. Laughter and nods sprang up as participants realized how small wording changes could transform tense exchanges into meaningful dialogue. Midway, Bryce and Jack slipped in to observe. Coach paused, nodded at them, then invited Jack to share his experience of the apology and subsequent support. Jack spoke with quiet confidence about forgiveness and the importance of feeling heard. His words resonated deeply, drawing empathetic murmurs. Back in role play, Coach Spencer highlighted boundaries, knowing when to refer students to counselors, when to involve parents, and how to maintain professional empathy without overstepping. He distributed a concise guidebook, Respect First, a staff manual, outlining protocols for respectful communication and conflict resolution. As the workshop closed, Coach addressed the group one last time. Our roles extend beyond teaching skills. We shape how students see themselves. He looked around, eyes meeting each colleague's. Let's commit to leading with empathy. Applause broke out, genuine and warm. Staff lingered, exchanging plans to implement the techniques. In the redesigned gym, Coach Spencer's workshop planted seeds of trust and understanding, ensuring that, moving forward, every interaction would honor the dignity of both student and teacher. The auditorium lights dimmed as students filed in for the Winding Hill Middle graduation walkthrough, a rehearsal for the big ceremony, but a milestone nonetheless. Jack adjusted his cap, the tassel brushing against his white-collared shirt. His heart hummed with anticipation, tempered by the lessons learned over the year. He stepped onto the stage first, pausing under the soft glow to smile at the empty seats below. Mrs. Reynolds gave him a thumbs up from the wings, pride shining in her eyes. Behind him, Teresa, Bryce, and other members of Peer Connect filed in, linked by the bonds they'd forged. Jack led them in a practice procession, right foot forward, shoulders back, heads held high. Each step echoed in the hush of the room, a rhythmic testament to their growth. At the center of the stage, Chuck Norris stood off to the side, recording the rehearsal on his phone, silent support for his son's moment. As the group formed a neat row, Principal Harris joined them, handing out generic rehearsal certificates to each student. Jack accepted his with a nod, eyes meeting those of Bryce, who gave a respectful grin. Then came the symbolic handshake. Each student stepped forward to shake Principal Harris's hand, then turned to receive a congratulatory pat from Coach Spencer. When it was Jack's turn, Coach paused, offering a deliberate squeeze of his shoulder before letting go, conveying mutual respect born from real trials. The walkthrough concluded with a final bow to the imaginary audience. Jack and his peers turned, forming pairs to exit. Jack found himself beside Bryce, exchanging a quick fist bump. Their journey from conflict to camaraderie had come full circle. Backstage, Chuck met Jack, clapping quietly. "You did great," he said. Jack exhaled, relief blooming into pride. "Thanks, Dad." As they walked out into the lobby, corridors buzzing with proud families and faculty, Jack felt the weight of the year lift. The graduation walkthrough wasn't just a rehearsal. It was the culmination of courage, respect, and resilience. Every step they'd taken, every challenge they'd faced, had led them here, ready to cross the Real stage and own their stories. Jack stood outside the gym one last time, the late afternoon sun painting long shadows across the pavement, and let out a deep breath. He thought of the turmoil of that first day, the spit, the whispers, the sting of humiliation, and how each moment had forged a new understanding in him. Respect wasn't just demanded. It was earned through courage and integrity. He recalled his father's calm guidance, Coach Spencer's genuine remorse, and Bryce's hesitant but heartfelt apology, each act of accountability transforming their world. The peer mentors he led in Peer Connect flashed before his eyes, newfound leaders committed to kindness, and the respect wall, where students celebrated each other's strengths. He remembered Mrs. Reynolds's circle shares, the staff workshop on empathy, and a community rally where parents, teachers, and neighbors stood united. Each chapter of the year had taught him something vital. That dignity must be protected, that mistakes offer the chance for growth, and that true strength lies in standing up for what's right, even when it scares you. Jack smiled at the thought of the broken mug that had sparked courage in Myra Norris, a reminder that broken things still held meaning, and he tucked his cap under his arm, feeling grounded by his own trials. He glanced back at the school doors, the place where his story had nearly been defined by a moment of disgrace, now a crucible where character was reborn. As he walked home beside his father, their footsteps in sync, Jack carried these lessons like a living legacy. Leadership through listening, power through compassion, and the unbreakable bond of family and community. The future stretched before him, wide and promising, and he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would meet them with the same steady heart and unwavering respect that had carried him through his toughest days.